Okay. So today I'll be focusing on the figure of the libertine in London. I will look at how libertinism has been represented in the Restoration period through Samuel Pepys's diary, and also an anonymous ballad titled The London Libertine, or The Lusty Gallant, New Ingenious Way of Living. Initially, however, it's essential to consider the libertine. A libertine can be defined as a person, typically a man, who is not restrained by morality, especially with regard to sexual relations, a person dissolute or promiscuous habits. Libertinism is associated with freedom, and thus the libertine is arguably unrestrained and hedonistic. To reaffirm the nature of the libertine, I've provided a clip which hopefully everyone can enjoy from the film The Libertine. So, it's based on Rochester, who is widely known for his rakish poetry on the libertine. So if I can get technology to work in my favour.
Much wine had passed with grave discourse of who fucks who and who does worse, when I, who still take care to see drunkenness relieved by lechery, went out into St. James's Park to cool my head and fire my heart. But though St. James has the honour on't, 'tis consecrate to prick and count. There, by a most incestuous birth, strange woods spring from the teeming earth, and nightly now, beneath their shade, are buggeries, rapes, and incests made.
So, now I've considered the figure of the libertine and the nature of libertinism, I intend to consider Pepys' display of such behaviour within his diary. Samuel Pepys began writing his diary on the 1st of January 1660 and continued to record his daily life for almost 10 years, up until the 31st of May 1669. Amongst these entries are details of his personal life, including the turbulent relationship with his wife, and also the relationships of the many women he pursued. As stated by C.S. Knighton in the Oxford Dictionary of National Biography, the diary is naturally the single most important source of knowledge about Pepys himself and his relationships, and his public reputation derives largely from the image he projects of himself during the diary years 1660 to 69. If this is the case, then what image has Pepys provided of himself through his frank confession of his diary? Certainly not of a loyal and dedicated husband or of a sexually shy being. On the 4th of September 1660, Pepys writes of Mrs. Diana coming to his house, as he states, "Mrs. Diana comes by, whom I took into my house upstairs, and there did dally with her a great while, and found that in Latin, and excuse my translation, nulla quella negat." Although he doesn't actually state what happened, it is easily uncovered. There is an attempt at covering up what he is saying, as he wrote it in Latin, and so this would imply that he knew what he had done was wrong, and yet he wanted it to still enter into his diary, and so he did so in Latin so that it may not be understood. The Latin statement, however, translates roughly as "young girls never say no," or "the girl refused nothing," and so this highlights his promiscuous libertine lifestyle. This continues through his diary, as can be seen again in his entry on the 4th of December in 1665, whereby Pepys wrote, "After the observing, God forgive me, one or two of my neighbour Jason's women come to town, which did please me very well." Pepys expresses his love and appreciation of women, and yet the way he exclaims, "God forgive me," insinuates that he knows that his attitude towards women may be deemed as dissolute. In the same entry that evening, Pepys then confessed the following: "At Greenwich, went and sat with Madame Paddington, and made her undress her head and sit dishevelled, all night sporting till 2 in the morning, and so away to my lodging, and so to bed." The first thing to note here is the ellipses after the mention of Madame Pennington. It instantaneously provides the impression that Pepys has acted wrongly with this woman as he pauses just after the utterance of her name. He then explicitly discloses his sexual activity with her, seeming proud as he mentions how late he was up sporting with her. Furthermore, on the 7th of May, 1668, Pepys displayed the extent of his promiscuity as he admires many women. I did see Beck Marshall come dressed off of the stage and looks mighty fine and pretty and noble, and also now in her boy's clothes, mighty pretty. Here I did kiss the pretty woman newly come, called Peg. That was Sir Charles Sidley's mistress, a mighty pretty woman, and seems, but is not, modest. The way in which he appears to list and admire many different women emphasises his desires for other women, other than his own wife. He appears to be missing any moral thought for his wife and is instead making the most of being with other women while she is away. Finally, on the 8th of February 1668, Pepys revealed his purchase of a pornographic book, as he wrote, "Thence away to the Strand, to my booksellers, and there stayed an hour, and bought the idle roguish book, The Shoulder Fills, which I bought in plain binding, avoiding the buying of it better bound, because I resolve, as soon as I have read it, to burn it, that it may not stand in the list of books, nor among them to disgrace them, if it should be found." Pepys admits to his purchase of the book, and yet wishes to remove all traces of the book by burning it, after he has read it so it would not disgrace him. This makes it apparent that Pepys, although acting as a libertine with his sexual promiscuity, he did in fact have some moral thought and concern, as he did not wish to be caught with the book. Despite this, however, he still did write his purchasing of the book and wrote it into his diary, and so it leaves the question whether he did truly care what people thought of his actions, as he still wrote a detailed account of his behaviour. James Franklin Turner criticised and questions Pepys' diary, as he stated, "Pepys' erotic relationship to the people has clearly been constructed by his reading, as well as by the customary liberties of London. Like the pseudo-Artine wandering whore, he narrates his sexual activity as a series of tricks performed in unexpected places." In spite of this criticism, however, I believe it is evident from his diary that Pepys genuinely did wish to enjoy the finer things in life, and so did so without restraint and becomes a fine example of libertine in London in the Restoration period. Now, however, I must consider the ballad The London Libertine, or the lusty gallant, new ingenious way of living. Published anonymously, The London Libertine is written in first-person narrative from the perspective of the libertine. The title of the ballad is significant, as it is presenting the lifestyle of the libertine as ingenious, therefore claiming to be a favourable character within society. The ballad begins with a self-admirable tone, as it claims, then to admiration. I court the ladies fair and gay, 'tis in vain for them to say me nay. I first adored their charms, then clasped them in my arms. And though perchance they cry, be civil, sir, oh fie, yet still they'll panting lie, for they do love a little wanton play. The libertine has a conceited tone, bragging about his ability to lure women, and claiming that they'll never turn down his advances. This self-assured attraction continues in the following stanza, as the libertine states that there is not 1 in 20 has power to deny me, I'll give them kisses plenty. Then straight they sit down by me, let her be widow, maid, or wife, for a time I love as dear as life. If she be young and fair, there's no degree I spare, from ladies of renown in city, court, and town. The libertine is disclosing his love of many women, and shows that his perception of himself is so high that none of them will deny him. This is incredibly similar to the attitude previously identified in Pepys' diary, when he claimed that young girls never say no in his entry on the 4th of September 1660. Pepys also made his attraction to the young and fair very explicit, as has been done in The London Libertine here. And so the ballad of the libertine appears to be directly relatable to Pepys' attitudes and behaviour. The mention of a widow, maid, or wife is also noteworthy, as Pepys also claimed to love his wife alongside his mistresses on the side. He merely loved the attraction of all women. The next stanza of the ballad continues to demonstrate similarities to Pepys, as the libertine asserts, there's 5 or 6 and 30 young dames that do adore me, and faith I can't be dirty when they in tears implore me, for something which I have to give, if I am, then never let me live, like to the tender dove, I'll grant them love for love. The libertine describes his sexual promiscuity as an obligation, as though he has to have the relations he does. The ballad is not only justifying the nature of the libertine, it is expressing it as a positive and encouraging character. The Restoration period was a time of vast social change, whereby attitudes in London were changing greatly, and the positive outlook displayed by Pepys and the ballad of the London Libertine towards libertinism is a prime example of these changing attitudes. The libertine, or the rake, was highly satirised in Restoration comedies, and yet these texts, which I've explored, express a positive attitude to the figure of the libertine. They depict a first-person narrative from the libertine, and so the audience is able to see it from their perspective, enabling the audience to see the thoughts of the libertine as opposed to the critical outlook on an outsider.
Okay, let's have questions. So, anybody have a question for him? Okay. Did you see anything in the diary which suggested that Pepys was kind of conscious of this notion of libertine in his world, because he was associated with, in some cases, the men who were actually responsible for putting these plays on and so on and so forth, and clearly knew Rochester at a remove.
Yeah.
Does he actually kind of discuss that whole libertine world in the diary?
The extracts that I looked at, he never addressed it directly, that I saw. What he does, because it's all about freedom and there's all about the coffee houses and he goes out and he gets drunk and there's a lot about living for like freedom and doing as he wishes. So that I saw, he doesn't explicitly like reference the libertine, although he does reference the lifestyle.
Right. You could say that the libertines are kind of, retrospective construct. We look back on Restoration culture and we think we can see this thing happening, because this ballad that we've drawn up there indicates that even in that period, that term was kind of in circulation.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you kind of thought that...
He does sort of assume that he is the character of a libertine, although, unless I missed it, I didn't actually see him ever refer to himself as a libertine.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.